Okay, so we all know that urinary bladder is a hollow muscular sac which basically acts as a reservoir of the urine, which is formed, of course, by the kidney, and from kidney up to urinary bladder, uh, we have a connection in terms of ureters, and we know the ureter brings whatsoever urine is formed in the urine by a very important physiological mechanism of the function of the kidney. And once that urine is formed, ureter is basically bringing that urine into the bladder, and then this urine will be kept till maturation occurs in this hollow muscular sac, which is your urinary bladder. It stores and expels urine through urethra, of course, and basically give the temporary storage to the urine. Okay, so where it is located, what is the location, what is the position of the urinary bladder, that we need to understand. So first of all, if we talk about the adult, it is the pelvic organ, because it is present in the anterior part of the lesser pelvis, immediately behind the pubic symphysis. So in this picture, this is the pubic symphysis, and this is the area, means basically the lesser pelvis or the pelvic area, pelvic cavity proper. And in an adult, it is a purely an organ. It is basically a pelvic organ because it lies in this pelvic cavity. While in case of infant, it is primarily as a abdominopelvic organ. Why it is abdominopelvis? Because when the childs are very small, urinary is not that much well formed. इतनी अच्छे से नहीं बनी है. So primarily it is lying in the abdomen. And as after the age of 6 years, जैसे जैसे pelvic cavity की growth होती है, धीरे धीरे ये descend करता है and proper pelvic cavity में आ जाता है. Of course, a distended bladder, even in an adult, it is descending and reach into the false pelvis or in the lower part of the abdominal cavity. राइट, बट जब मैं बात कर रहा हूँ कि पोजीशन या लोकेशन की, सो दिस इज बेसिकली कि एक एम्प्टी ब्लैडर इन्फेंट्स में कहाँ है, so it is basically a abdominopelvic structure. And if you look at this picture, this is this is neck, is that part or the most dependent part of the urinary bladder, from where your urethra is coming out and then it is going down. So this is the region of the neck. So in case of an infant, this neck basically lies at the upper border of the pubic symphysis. And in case of an adult, this neck, the level of this neck is basically at the lower end of the pubic symphysis. So basically, what is happening, because of the growth of the pelvic cavity, the empty bladder, which in case of an infant, because this neck region is lying at the level of the upper border of the pubic symphysis, gradually descend and comes to its adult position, which is a pelvic organ, because we know in adults this lies basically in the lesser pelvic cavity or the proper pelvic cavity or the true pelvic cavity, and that time the neck basically lies at the lower border of the pubic symphysis. So you should know कि किस तरह से डिसेंड करता है. इनिशियली ये एक एब्डोमिनल पेल्विक ऑर्गन था, और जैसे जैसे ग्रोथ होती है puberty के बाद में, this is the location of the neck of the bladder. So it reaches the adult position only after puberty, and between 9 years till the age of the puberty, there is hardly any descent of the bladder. So initially there is descent of the bladder, फिर वो arrest हो जाता है. उसके बाद में जैसे ही puberty के पास में एज आती है, वापस से इसका descent शुरू होता है, and finally it reach to its final position or the location, which is basically. Let us see about the capacity of this important organ. So average capacity is roughly, it can hold somewhere 120 to 320 ml of the urine. Mean, you can say around 200 to 220 ml is the mean capacity or the mean capacity of this muscular organ. And once the urine which is there in this sac is reached up to 100 to 150 ml, it gives you a sense of the feeling. And yes, first desire of micturition will be when this capacity, when the amount of the urine crosses 150 ml. So basically, average capacity is 120 to 320 ml. In different books, they have mentioned 150, 100 ml. So I have taken these from the Gray's anatomy book. So this capacity is basically 120 to 320 ml, mean is 220 ml, and at the A means जब urine आपका 100 ml के आसपास आता है, it gives a sense of the feeling, and after 150 to the maturation. Now the thing is that the physiological capacity of distension which is there without any discomfort is up to 450 to 450 ml. Means up to 250 ml there will be no basically discomfort. अगर हमारा मतलब bladder जो है up to 450 ml तक भी अगर हम यूरिन उसमें कलेक्ट कर लेते हैं तो उसमें ज़्यादा हमको किसी भी किस्म का डिस्कम्फर्ट नहीं होगा. But after it reaches at this capacity, which is 450 ml, beyond that capacity, you will start feeling pain. Distension का तो आपको आएगा ही आएगा, लेकिन painful भी हो जाएगा. And of course, the maturation beyond the voluntary control, once you reaches this capacity reaches around 800 ml, then it will not be possible for us to hold by an adult to hold this basically urine, and then the maturation will be there in a involuntary fashion. So basically, this is I'm talking in reference to an adult urinary bladder. And the anatomical capacity, if you talk about the anatomical capacity, there is a difference between the physiological and the anatomical capacity. Of course, the anatomical capacity is around or maybe more than 1 liter, but we cannot hold more than 800 ml of the urine at a time in case of a normal adult male. I'm talking of the male. Okay. So what is the shape of this important organ in our body? So as far as shape is concerned, it is basically tetrahedral when it is empty. So if you look at this figure, this is basically a tetrahedral shape. I will show you with some simple diagrams also, some line diagrams for the better understanding in coming slide. So basically shape and the size depend upon कि कितना इसके अंदर यूरिन भरा हुआ है. एक empty urinary bladder जो होता है, it gives an impression a shape of basically tetrahedron. While अगर इसके अंदर यूरिन भरता चले जाता है तो it becomes the ovoid in its shape, right? So shape is not fixed, it is not a fixed shape structure just like your stomach. Depend कि किस तरह से कितना यूरिन इसके अंदर शेप को चेंज करता है. So basically empty bladder in case of cadavers or an adult human is tetrahedral in shape, while full bladder in living person is basically ovoid in shape. Oval हो जाता है क्योंकि भरता जा रहा है थैली से और कुछ नहीं है, right? So just for the descriptive feature, these are the line diagram which I would like to share with you so that we can understand about the different external features of the urinary gland. Now, as I mentioned you, it is tetrahedral, right? So you can see in this picture, this is the most dependent part of the urinary bladder, and from where you can see this is the area of the urethra. This is, of course, I've shown you the bladder of the male for the better understanding. This is the area where your prostate lies. So basically, this most dependent part, or the lowest and most fixed part of the bladder is basically the neck of the bladder. And from here we have this urethra which is going on, and in case of male, we know urethra is having some prostatic part. So because it is traversing or passing through the prostatic gland, so this is the area of the urethra which passes through the prostate. So this most lowest and the most dependent part of your urinary bladder is basically your neck. And here, if you look at here, there are two more tubes which is coming and basically you can see entering into the urinary bladder. These are two ureters which is basically connecting this urinary bladder with that of the kidney above. So kidney से हमारे पास ureter आई, इस तरह से ये ureter आ रही है यहाँ पे. So this is the ureter which is basically standing on the uh, towards the base of the urinary gland. Right. Now the part which is basically facing towards the posterior surface of the pubic symphysis, and then it is attached to a median umbilical ligament which is nothing but the remnant of embryonic urethus. So जो urethus था उससे हम already पढ़ चुके हैं. This there now it is now means in an adult it is basically present as a median umbilical ligament. So the part which is basically just behind just behind the posterior surface of your pubic symphysis, and which is attached via a ligament with that of the umbilicus is your, this is the median umbilical ligament. So this is the apex part of this uh, uh, hollow structure, which is your neck. So most dependent on the lowest part is your neck, the part which lies posterior to the posterior surface or the pelvic surface, in relation to the pelvic surface of your pubic basically bone is the apex, and it is connected, and it is basically connected with a median umbilical ligament, and this median umbilical ligament is moving towards the umbilicus, and posterior superiorly you can see two more tubes which will be opening in this basically structure. So this tetrahedral structure is basic one superior surface which is over here. Now it is having one inferior lateral surface on the right side. Then similarly it is having one inferior lateral surface on the left side. And this area, this area is the base of the urinary bladder. So we will see one by one all these features. So basically neck, and the apex is the part of the urinary bladder which give attachment to the median umbilical ligament over here. And then if you look on the posterior side, means this side, you can see the base of the posterior surface basically at the junction of the inferior lateral surface with that of the posterior surface in its upper part, you can identify the presence of the ureter. So this is where your ureters get come and basically opens into your urinary bladder. So if we look at the surfaces and the borders, so this in the apex and your neck is your anterior border. Now between two ureters is your posterior border. You can see over here. So the border which runs between your apex and the most dependent part, which is your neck, is your anterior border of the urinary bladder. The border which runs between the two openings of ureter is your posterior border. And the borders basically, if you look here, if you look in this picture, these are the two lateral border within the where your ureter is coming and attaching here, and it divide basically the superior surface of your urinary bladder with that of the inferior lateral aspect. So here this is on the right side and this is on the left side are two lateral borders. So one, this is your anterior border of the bladder which runs between apex up to the neck. Between two ureter you have the posterior border, and from here up to the apex you have two lateral borders on both the sides. So one will be right lateral border. So let's see what are the surfaces. So if you look in this picture, this apex, this is the coronal section of lower abdominal wall and your pelvic cavity. You can see here, you can see this is the prostatic gland, this is the prostatic gland, this is the bladder. You can very well appreciate here, this is the direction of your apex. So basically the direction of apex is forward and upward, and it is connected. It is basically this apex is basically held by the median umbilical ligament, which you can see is running towards force. So this is how median umbilical ligament, which is nothing but the remnant of the urethra, right over here. So apex is directing forward and upward. Now coming on to the base. So this is the apex. This is again a sagittal section for the better understanding. What is visible here? This is the pubic symphysis. You can see. So as I mentioned, this is an organ which is basically, this is the neck of the bladder, which lies at the level of the lower border of the pubic symphysis over here, which is attached with the median umbilical ligament, which connects it with that of the umbilical. Over here, this is the apex, and here you have the opening of ureter on both the sides. So in a sagittal section, you can very well appreciate this tetrahedral organ. So this is the neck, this is the base of the bladder. You have one anterior border which is shown in this picture. Similarly, you have two borders which are the lateral border. So what we have seen Now we will be looking. We will be looking this in case of males, and in case of female we have one basic difference which I will be showing you with arrows. So you can see this urinary bladder just lies immediately posterior to this pubic symphysis in the anterior part of the root axis, and posterior to that you have the rectum in case of males, while in case of females, between this urinary bladder and this rectum, you have the part of the female genital tract, which is over here. This is basically the vagina, cervix of the uterus. This is the cervix of the uterus. Here, this is the uterus, right? So between urinary bladder and your basically rectum, in case of female, you have this structure, and in case of male, directly the base is in relation to the rectal abuse. So in case of male and female, the base is having different relation, which I will be telling you, and I will be showing you, and I will be giving you more explanation when we will be talking about the peritoneal relation. So if you look at this picture, here we have the seminal vesicle and the vasa deferens, which lies in the relation to the base of the base of the bladder in case of a male. While if you look at this picture in case of female, now it is in relation the base of the urinary bladder, which is here, lies in relation with that of the lowermost part of this process, which is the cervix over here. So you can see, and then posterior to that you have, this is the location of your basically uh, ampoule of your right, right? So basically, if you look at this picture, this is the peritoneum which is coming. So basically, here this is the anterior abdominal wall. Here is coming the peritoneum, the parietal part of the peritoneum. This is peritoneum, and then the anterior aspect of the upper part of your basically rectum. Even it is not extending here, so you can see it is forming a very important relation here between the vesicle or your bladder and the rectum. Here it forms a pouch, which is your rectovesical pouch. So here the peritoneal relation of the base, the peritoneum forming relation with the base of the urinary bladder only in its upper part. Otherwise, you can see there is no peritoneum, because peritoneum reflects and forms this rectovesical pouch over here, right? While in case of female, there is then it reflects along the anterior surface of the urinary against the anterior surface of the uterus, and then it goes like this. So there is no relation of the peritoneum with that of the base. Rather, directly the vagina and the fifth part of the cervix lies in relation to the base of your urinary bladder. So these are some important things which you need to understand. So this base in a tetrahedral bladder is basically triangular in shape. I'm sorry that I could not show you the three-dimensional picture, but yes, it is basically, if in a coronal view you can see, moving my cursor, so it is triangular in shape. And this part of the equilateral triangle is giving attachment to the urethra on the right side, on the left side, and then the urethra will be coming from here. So this triangular posterior, or the base or the posterior surface, which is also termed by some scientists as the fundus of the bladder, is triangular in shape, and it is directing basically posterior inferiorly towards the rectum. And in case of male, we have in relation to the base of your posterior surface or base of the urinary bladder, while in case of female, it is directly basically lying in relation to the vagina and the cervix over here, right? And posterior to, between your vagina and your rectum, you have the recto-uterine pouch. Already जो आपने peritoneal के relation से पढ़ा हुआ है, so that. But base is not having any other relation. It is directly in relation to with this part of the female genital tract. Now coming to the superior surface, if you pubic symphysis. This is the anterior abdominal wall. This is male. This is female. You can see we have the seminal vesicles over here. This is the rectum. This is the rectum in case of female. This is the base. This is the neck. Now I'm talking of this superior surface. So this superior surface in males as well as in females, it is covered by the parental peritoneum. You can see this is the reflection of the peritoneum. You can see very quickly. This is again, if you look from the superior aspect in this line diagram, you can very well appreciate this is again triangular V shape. Just like your base, which is having one side here, one side here, and one side here. Similarly, this is the superior surface, which is again triangular in shape. It is bounded on each side by your inferior by your the lateral borders, and here this is the posterior border, and along the posterior border you have the posterior laterally to the apex. So this is the location of apex, posterior lateral to the apex, right over here. Now, in case of male, as I showed you in this picture, in case of male, this superior surface, which is triangular in shape, is completely covered by the peritoneum. You can see this is completely covered by the peritoneum, right? And 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 above to this peritoneum you have the coils of the ilium, and in case of female, if you look here, it is not completely covered by the peritoneum because of the presence of this part of the uterus. So peritoneum reflects here from the interior surface of the uterus. So it is not completely covered. The superior surface of the bladder in case of female is not completely covered by the peritoneum, but yes, in the small area near its posterior border, it is basically related with that of the supravaginal part of your uterus. So this is the uterine surface. It lies in relation to the superior surface, right? And here, this will be forming the vesico-uterine pouch. So the peritoneal pouch between your bladder and uterus is your basically vesico-uterine pouch. So this is how the superior surface in case of male and female is related with the peritoneum, and of course with the different viscera. So here you have the coils of the ilium as well as the sigmoid colon. In case of female, peritoneal reflect here and form the vesico-uterine pouch, and the most posterior most part of the superior aspect of the bladder or the superior surface of bladder is not related to peritoneum. Now, this is a fraction for which I took from this is the my references. So you can see on the right side you have the male side, this is the female side, this is the bladder. Here this is umbilical ligament. You can see this is the superior surface, which is roughly triangular in shape, and posterior side for the main. This is the base, which is on the between the rectum and your urinary bladder. So that side, the triangular see in case of female between rectum and urinary bladder, you have presence of the supravaginal part of basically of your uterus, which is present here. You can see this is the difference in case of male and female. So this is already I explained you about the superior surface. You can see in this picture also here, this is the female pelvis, or the more and you can see here between bladder and uterus you have the vesico-uterine pouch, and then here between the uterus and the reflection, right? So this is basically triangular and is covered by the peritoneum, and this lies in relation to with that of the sigmoid colon, and of course the coils of intestine and uterus in case of female. Now coming on to the inferior lateral surface. So if we see what are the structure related to the inferior lateral surface, so basically, inferior lateral surface basically slopes downward, forward. So this is downward, forward, and if you see in a three-dimensional picture, you can see it is moving like this. So as I mentioned you in this line diagram, this is very easy to understand. See, you can see like this is the inferior lateral surface on the right side. Similarly, you have one inferior lateral surface on the other side. So each this inferior lateral surface basically slopes downward, forward, and towards the medially, and meets with that of the opposite side in mid line is a range. So that line diagram was basically for better understanding. You can see, and it has some relation with that of the body of the pubis, with that of the symphysis pubis, and of course the obturator internus and the levator ani, because we know how the wall of the pelvis is formed. So if I show you the relation of the inferior lateral surface here in this picture, you can see towards the lateral wall of the pelvis. You can see here, this is the obturator internus, the urethra. This is the opening of the vagina. Here, this is the part of the basically rectum part has been removed just for the understanding. So you can see what all relations the inferior lateral surface of bladder will be forming here. So this is will be having relation with the body of the pubis, with that of the obturator internus and its fascia, and of course it will be having relation with that of the levator ani muscle along with its fascia, right? And the space, this is one very clinically important space between the wall of the pelvis and with that of the inferior lateral aspect of your bladder is basically termed as the space of Zeta. So we will see how this space is occupied with different things. So space of Reeds is basically a horseshoe-shaped recess. So this is, you are looking from the superior aspect. This is the apex. So basically, this is the apex of the urinary bladder. This is the which is between the anterior lateral aspect, the space which is present between the inferior lateral surface of the bladder and with that of the wall of your pelvic through pelvis. This potential space is the space of which is horseshoe shaped recess, and this act as a bursa which allows distension of the urinary bladder. So this space will be acting as a bursa which allow basically the distension of urinary bladder. Now, what are the basically contains one thing which is the retropubic fat, and one very important thing is the vesical venous plexus. So the venous plexus which is draining your urinary bladder, lies within this potential space of rate. And this space can be utilized by the surgeon for if they are doing some operative procedure in this area. Now, let's talk about the neck. So what we have seen the superior surface, we have seen the base of the urinary bladder. Now we will be looking at the neck. So what is neck? I started this session explaining the base, explaining the neck of the bladder, because that is how means, because this is the most lowest and the most fixed part of your bladder, right? So very easy to identify. So this is the most inferior part. You can see here, which is related to prostate in case of males, and of course in case of females, the superior field of your urinary bladder. So if we talk about the neck of this area, so this is the lowest and the most fixed part, which is situated where you have the inferior lateral and the posterior surfaces of bladder meet. So you can see here, this is the posterior surface here, because this is not a three-dimensional picture, so we can see only one side of the inferior lateral surface, this side, and of course there will be on that side. So these three surfaces met at the neck, right? And this centimeters behind the inferior border of your pubic symphysis. And in case of male, it is in relation with that of the prostate, as I explained you earlier also. And in case of the female, it will be in relation to the urogenital diaphragm and the lining, which is lined by the superior pelvic fascia. So here, that fascia will be in relation to the neck of this urinary bladder. So basically, this is all about the neck. If you see in this picture, this is pubic symphysis. Here, this is prostate again. Urethra, this is the prostatic part of the urethra in males. Here, this is the location of your rectum. Now, this is if you talk about the distended bladder, this is no more maintaining its tetrahedral shape. Now, it is more or less like an ovoid structure. And if you look here, this anterior, inferior, or the even the interior lateral surface basically will be pushed and it is not lined by the peritoneum here. So in case of distended bladder, there will be no peritoneum here. There will be no. Otherwise, also peritoneum basically moves like this, but when it is distended, it will further peel off the parietal part of the peritoneum away from the anterior abdominal wall in lower abdomen, basically like that. So it is non-peritoneal except only here, which is the uppermost part of the distended bladder. So you should know this thing before then you want to so this is the pubic area, and if surgeon or some physician want to collect the urinary sample, which is the ideal or the gold standard if we want to do some urine examination, so we need to take the blood, take the urine sample directly if we want to do then to do full bladder. Surgeons or the physician or the emergency, they are starting basically from the supra pubic area, the supra is no be injured. So this is for the peritoneal distended abdomen